All right, a very warm welcome to you, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are talking about pendulum healing. The world of energy healing is really very vast. In that, a very important space is occupied by pendulum healing. And I have with me today a very special guest who has devoted a major portion of his life into the world of pendulum healing. He has written a lot of books on dowsing as well as pendulum healing. Some of his popular titles are Pendulum Healing and Advanced Pendulum Healing. Also, he's a very seasoned healer. He has tried out various modalities, but finally he has found his peace most with pendulum healing. It gives me great pleasure to invite Dr. Erich Hunter to shed some light on this important healing modality. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, Erich.
Thanks for having me.
Most welcome. In fact, I was wondering, when I bought my first healing pendulum, and I was just lying down and somebody called me and they were suffering from a back pain. And I thought, let me do something with it. So I tried healing them first at a distance with the help of this pendulum, but it didn't work. So I then slept and I told them to come to my clinic the next day. And then weeks passed, months passed, nothing happened. One day, one of my friends, who is a little obese, she was with me and it was around dinner time. And I used to treat her knee whenever there was a pain in the knee with the help of some acupressure points. But the acupressure points are normally painful. So this time she asks me, what happened to your pendulums which you had bought? Can you try something on me using these pendulums? I said, yes, why not? Let me. So I just opened my cupboard, I took out the pendulum and I tried this on her knee. And to my surprise, it worked. She got rid of her pain. And that is when I started to take this pendulum healing seriously. I went about reading books. I read your books as well, and I'm a great fan of your work, which you have shared with public. It is so nice of you. And so I want you to share some light on this whole process of pendulum healing, how it works.
Yeah, sure. So there is a lot I could discuss with what you just told me. I can explain to you why it may not have worked in the first case, why it may have worked in the second case, and also what is going on. And so I'll just step back for a moment, though, and just for the audience, in case anyone's new. So what you can do is you can use your pendulum and your spoken word, or sometimes just the pendulum itself, and you can use it to cause shifts to reality and transformation. So it could be like in the case of health, it could be you could cause a shift or transformation in someone's health. Sometimes that shift may be small, sometimes it may be large. Like in the case you mentioned with the knee, when you use the pendulum on the person's knee, all of a sudden the knee is feeling better. And I'll go into that in a minute, possible explanations for that. But basically, that's the idea, is that instead of just using the pendulum to ask questions and get information, you use the pendulum as an energy healing tool. And this is the unique idea that most people who use pendulums are not aware of. And so your story illustrates, or what you told me illustrates a lot of very important things. Number one, when you're first starting off, and even when you're doing this all the time, you won't always see an effect, or maybe you won't see an effect right away. And the reason for this is that there's always resistance to change. So part of what we do with the pendulum is we try to decrease the level of resistance or overcome resistance. And we're using our spoken word, and that's a form of consciousness, and we're using the pendulum's energy to do that. But in some cases, the level of resistance will be too high. So if there's this much resistance, and this is where you're starting off, and then this is the level of resistance, well, if you do the pendulum and you decrease the level of resistance by this much, it's still not enough to overcome the challenge. But if the level of resistance is down here and you're starting off here and you do the pendulum, it can be enough to allow you to overcome the resistance, or the person to overcome the resistance, and to have a healing response to that stimulus. So the thing is, though, it's very hard to predict in advance how much resistance there is. So, for example, when someone does, like, let's say someone does a healing and it's someone who's very sick, and then the person has a total rapid recovery, they call that a miracle healing. But what that means is that the level of resistance was actually very low, like the body wanted to heal, and just by some efforts, you were able to overcome it. And that seems like a miracle because we can't see it in advance how much resistance there is. In other cases, there may be something very easy that you try to heal or help, but it seems like nothing is changing. It's almost impossible. So, for example, with the back pain that you're talking about, that problem, the pendulum can help with that. But usually the pendulum itself will not be enough to solve it, because a lot of back pain, it can be caused by physical injury, but it can also be caused by psychosomatic, or your thoughts causing the pain, like you're under stress, or things like that. So what's going to happen with the pendulum in a case like with back pain, and I just know this from experience, having tried it with lots of people, some people will see a result, but other cases you're going to have to combine this pendulum work with other actions that you take. So, for example, you can do pendulum work on the physical pain for the person, but you could also do, I have a protocol called emotional healing. You can do that protocol to help the person energetically process the emotions that might be causing the back pain. And then you can also do things. I have another technique that I developed with a student of mine called resonance healing. And with that technique, the person's thoughts and feelings come into alignment. So it may be like they want to fix their back pain, but in their unconscious or their subconscious, their back pain is providing them with some benefit. Like they don't have to work as much, or they have an excuse not to do certain things, or maybe they just don't feel supported in their life, and then it shows up as back pain. So with the pendulum and this resonance healing technique, you can get their thoughts and their feelings into alignment to make it more likely that they'll be able to heal the pain. But you can also use the pendulum to draw in another healing method. So you could say, I witnessed myself finding the perfect massage therapist, or the perfect chiropractor, or the perfect person to help me resolve my back pain. So even if you don't solve the back pain problem itself with the pendulum, you could use the pendulum to, number one, make it more likely that you'll be able to resolve it, and then also use it to call in assistance from other areas, like that someone might show up, or someone would say, oh, hey, did you ever hear of this chiropractor? He's really great. Or, do you ever hear of this massage method? It really was effective for my lower back. And then, you've called it in with your pendulum. So that's what I would say about that case there. And the important thing is, like, you have to try this several times in the beginning. You may see a result right away, but like for me, when I first started doing this, I did not necessarily see results immediately. Like I was just curious, and I was experimenting with many different energy healing modalities. I was trying radionics, I was trying pendulums, I was trying energy healing. I was doing lots of things, and I would see some results sometimes. But there were a few, like I just kept doing this, and then there were a few times where I saw that something happened that is hard to explain, that probably would not have happened otherwise. And then that got me thinking, okay, maybe something is going on here. And then the more that I started doing it, I started seeing that, wow, this is actually doing a lot. Like many things that people would say, like, how did that happen? Or like my wife would be like, I can't believe that just happened. That worked. And it's like, yeah. So after a while, you start to do it. So it's good that you were able to work through that, and that someone encouraged you to try it. and then I'll just talk about the knee quickly, and then I promise I'll let you go. So with the knee, you know, someone could say like, oh, well, that was just the placebo effect. You know, the person saw you holding the pendulum and they trust you, and that caused the placebo response. And my answer to that is, well, yes, that could be true. And if that is true, there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of modern medicine depends on the placebo effect to work. Like when they do a test of a drug against placebo, many times the placebo is as effective as the real drug. You know, many medical procedures have never actually been tested against the placebo, so they don't even know if it's better. But here's what I say about that. When you start doing this enough, you'll do it in situations where the placebo effect could not be happening. So for example, you could be doing a distance healing on an animal, like a dog. Like I did a distance healing on a dog that was in Taiwan, and I was living in California. And the dog had no way, could not know that I was doing this healing. The owner, you know, unless the owner was a psychic, maybe, and they could psychically communicate to their dog, and then their dog could have a placebo effect. The dog, you know, it seems improbable that the dog would know that I was doing this.
Right.
But the owner reported that the dog showed a dramatic improvement after the session. I had another instance too, like with a child who was not feeling well, and the mother was a student of mine, contacted me and said, can you just do something? And so I was like, yeah, sure. So she did not tell her child that I was doing anything. This kid was very young, and she was going to take the kid to the doctor the next day. So that it was responsible. It wasn't like the parent was being irresponsible. She just wanted some help before they got to the doctor. So I just did this, you know, and I didn't tell the kid. I didn't even tell the mother when I was doing it. And the next day she's like, well, the problem is gone. We went to the doctor and there was nothing wrong. You know, no, it doesn't always happen that way, but it makes it difficult for me to think that this is just placebo effect.
Right.
I'll give one more example. Like before I go into a store, maybe when I'm at home, or if, you know, maybe in my car before I walk in, I'll do something like harmonize my relationships with everybody in the store. You know, I witness myself having a great experience. Or if there are very long lines and I don't have a pendulum, I might just use my fingers. It's not as good, but it will work. I'll just spin my fingers and I'll just say like, you know, send love and healing to everyone on the line and all the people working in the store. Now, they have not heard me say this. They did not see me do this. And you would be surprised how fast the lines move. All of a sudden, someone will say, here, come to our cash register and you can buy your things here. Or someone will be like, oh, here, why don't you go ahead of me? Or people are just very friendly, like they'll just talk. And normally it's not like that. The funniest one ever was when I was getting my car repaired. I went to the place and the people were they were not friendly to me at all. They were just like, what do you want? You know? And so when I left, and they were like, well, the car will be ready in a few hours. So I left and I took my pendulum. I was like, send love and healing. I witnessed them getting it done in ways for their highest good, my highest good, and the highest good of all concerned. So when I came back there, they were so friendly. It was like I was a long lost relative. They were like, hey, how's it going? Welcome. Like, it was almost like they were going to invite me to their house for dinner later or something. It was so funny. And I was like, okay, this is totally working. So anyway, it was a very long answer. Thank you for your patience. But just to summarize, you know, try it several times. If it doesn't work the first time, don't give up on it. The placebo effect could be making it better, but it seems to even work without a placebo effect. And it's a really interesting technology that's not widely known. So yeah, that's where I'm kind of going with it.
No, excellent. And that is the same thing which happened with me. Thank God I did not give up. Had I given up, I would not have been here talking to you today. Now, very important things which you said. You gave so nice examples which will be acting as a motivation for people who would be watching you today. Were using the pendulum to solve real life issues apart from, healing the health, but healing some other kind of things. So one very important thing which you said is that either we will be able to heal the issue or we will be able to create the circumstances which will enable the person to get the issue solved. So it is kind of the very important word which you used here was a reality shift. So we can have the power to shift or to cause a shift in the reality just by using these pendulums. Now, I would wish to share one of the incidents which will bring me to the next question. So it was COVID time, and there was a family who used to come to me for various other reasons, astrological readings and all. And then suddenly they called me that the woman called me and said, my husband is not well, and we've been to the hospital. He had been hospitalized for a week, and now we are back home. But unfortunately, I mean, they were rich people, but at that particular point in time, they just ran out of money, just ran out of money. So this lady says that my husband has become very weak. He is unable to walk. Again, he was having extreme pain in his back. And can you do something about it? I said, no, the good thing will be that you visit a doctor, because I don't know what had happened to your husband. He was hospitalized for 7 days. So I will not be the right kind of a person to cause any kind of diagnosis in this particular issue. So they followed my advice. They went to the hospital. The doctor told them to do certain tests. They did the test, came back, and then said, see, frankly, now we have spent around 15,000 rupees, which we had, and we don't have more money. Either we'll keep crying or you call us. I said, okay, well, only in this case that you don't have any other alternative, that you can come to me, but I am not very sure what I'll be able to do. So they came to me, and I was just trying to understand that what is happening, because the medical reports were all okay. There was nothing significant in the medical reports which I studied, but still the man was not even, he was barely able to walk. So I thought, what is to be done now? So I tried again my hand at pendulum healing, because what happens in acupressure, we don't try to treat a person who's energetically very weak unless we try to bring the energy level up first. And there are other kind of healing modalities which I had in mind, but I don't know why, but I tried the pendulum healing first. It took about 15 to 20 minutes. I kept sitting at the place where I'm sitting right now. And there is a bed just opposite to where I'm sitting right now. Over there, the patient bed. This gentleman was lying. And after 15 minutes, he was able to walk. And now I am thinking, because here, I don't know how, but I applied some kind of a protocol. And I will come to this question to you on how to making use of various kind of pendulums. And this is where I got my first insight on which pendulum to use for which particular problem. However, the bigger problem was that once he got okay, they asked me what was the problem. And I had absolutely no answer, although I was able to make him okay. But I don't know what I did. And since I didn't know what I did, what report should I give? In other of our distance healings, we write a report that, okay, we found this problem and we release this problem. We find this emotion, we release that emotion. We find a belief, we release that belief. Or as you mentioned about, bringing into alignment the thoughts and feelings, if they are not in alignment, we do that and we tell them that we have done this. But here, unfortunately, it was very difficult for me. So how do we deal when it comes to communicating with people for whom we are working as to what we have done in the world of pendulum healing?
Okay, yeah, great question. So, in some cases, like you said, it's just going to be, you're going to experiment and you're just going to try different things, and you may not really understand why it worked, but hey, if the person is feeling better,
Yes.
that was the goal, so like, and in that case, but you could always say, that, well, I used pendulum and did a protocol, but so to structure this, I do have like specific methods that I've created either myself or with students, where like I said, the resonance healing, but I have like emotional healing protocol, a color healing protocol, a resonance healing, a pendulum tuning. I have protocols for geopathic stress. I have different courses that teach different protocols. So if you were to use one of those protocols, you could reference that, and you would say, well, I use the protocol for color healing, that I learned from Dr. Hunter, that I created, So like that would be one way to address it, or you can just tell the person, you know, hey, I'm doing this something called pendulum alchemy or pendulum healing, and you know, it's a way to shift the energy and to shift consciousness. So
Yes.
that could be enough. So, but like if they're super
Just
detail
like,
oriented,
yeah,
yeah,
just like in Reiki healing, we just heal. We just say that we have made the negativity evaporate and we have tried to bring in the new pranic energy. This is all we can say because we never dealt precisely with certain causes which we took out. We were just dealing, although you have told about
right.
the specific protocols, as you said, the resonance protocol, the color protocol, but even in your book, you mention about uh, various things. Like if you want to solve the stomach pain, you said, why not first increase the willingness of the stomach to receive the healing? And after that, if you do it, it is better. And of course, I have included some of the things which you have mentioned in your book and found them very useful. Now, would you like to know what I did in that particular case and how do I make sure that
Yeah,
without
sure.
using
Then I
protocol?
have another thought too, but I'll hold it until you're ready.
No, no, you are my guest, so please go ahead.
Oh,
I will follow.
well, the other thought is that there is a certain beauty to not diagnosing too much. Because in quantum physics, there's this idea that what you see becomes reality. And there's an amazing book called Distant Mental Healing by this guy, William Browd. And he talks about disease. And what he says is when a person is not feeling well, like that mysterious back pain you talked about, no one has really seen it. No outsider has really seen what's going on. So it could be like, well, maybe it's his mind. Maybe he has cancer. Maybe he strained his back. We don't really know what it is. But if someone comes like an authority figure, like a doctor or something like that, or like you, and you say, well, you know, you definitely have cancer, or
Mm.
you definitely are just imagining all this, you can then take what are multiple possible realities and collapse them down to one reality. And then you can make it so it's very difficult to change it because you've witnessed one. It's like the idea of the particle versus the wave, where the quantum physicists, they see the particle and then it becomes a particle. They see it as a wave, it becomes a wave. It's the same basic idea. So when something is mysterious with an illness, if it, you know, when a doctor comes in, like this is also explained in a book called The Placebo by Joe Dispenza,
Yeah.
where he talked about that someone who did not have cancer went to a doctor and the doctor was like, oh, you definitely have cancer. And then the person developed cancer. So like what you witness is very powerful. So there is a certain beauty sometimes to not going into every single detail. So like there are a lot of systems of dowsing where you're trying to determine every single possible reason, and they have these charts and everything. And that's okay, but it is there. The danger of that is that if you get too detailed, you may then witness something that's not correct and then make it more real.
Right.
You may make a mistake, or else you might see something that could be true, but it may not be true, or maybe it's starting to go that direction, but it could go in a different direction. Like they could either get healthy, stay the same, or get worse. And then you see them, like you do one of those dowsing things, and it's like, oh, you're definitely gonna die, you know. And you strengthen that, and then the person's like, oh no, I'm gonna die. And then that gets stronger and the other realities disappear. You know, whereas like, you know, you could choose a different reality, like you're going to get better, and then those realities disappear, and then that reality gets stronger. So that is the beauty of not getting too specific. And I kind of encourage people, like, if, like, you know, obviously you will want to see a medical professional for serious health issues,
Yes.
you know, and they will often give a diagnosis, and you can use their diagnosis because it's already been there. But
Yes.
if the person doesn't have a diagnosis, unless it's something minor, like, well, your thinking and your feeling were not in alignment. But if
Yeah.
it's something serious, like, oh, you have cancer or you have pancreas problems or something like that, I am very hesitant. I don't think people should do that with the pendulum personally. I think that should be, unless you're a professional, like maybe you are a professional in herbs or something, or modern medicine, or you have some training in some sort of, Indian medicine system or something, that this means this. Unless you're an expert on that, I don't think you should be doing diagnosis with your pendulum. And it can actually be somewhat dangerous to do. So I think that unless you're an expert, you should really try to minimize the diagnosis and focus more on shifting things the way you want to go, and leave the diagnosis for the medical professionals. That's my personal view.
No,
But I'd love to hear what you did. Yeah.
Yeah, so what happens is, because many a times what I'm about to say, it starts off with people who start their journey in the world of pendulum healing. Their first question is, which pendulum should I buy? And should I buy the Karnak or Isis or Osiris? Which one should I buy? Now, in our Hindu religion, and even in Christianity, there is this concept of Trinity. So the same concept I found in this Egyptian set of these three pendulums. So what I did in my initial days of my journey, especially in that case as well, that when I'm about to solve a case, I will take another pendulum and then I will ask, which one of these three should I use first? And I clearly remember that in another case of healing the knee problem, it specifically did not go away with the Isis, and therefore I used to use this Karnak again, or Karnak again, to make the relief possible. So from there, then I made it a practice to first douse for which pendulum would be good enough for me to administer to this particular problem. And whichever direction I was guided to, I used to pick up that particular pendulum. And initially, I just had these three specific healing pendulums. Only after that, slowly and gradually, I tried to increase my repertoire and had some other ones. So that was as far as my fixing of the particular pendulum for a particular malady is concerned. Now, what are your thoughts on? Do you have any thoughts to offer on which kind of pendulum should the person use for a particular manifestation or healing process?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I have some thoughts on that. So your approach was very good. So number one, I recommend that you have at least one pendulum which is of the proper type. And what I mean by this is that I strongly am opposed to the use of clear quartz crystals as pendulums. I believe there are problems with that. Also, pure copper. I do not like pendulums that are made from pure copper. I feel they're not good for the aura. And also pendulums that have a chain on them. So you do not want a pendulum from one of those three things, but a pendulum made from metal, it could be brass, it could be steel, it could be a precious metal that has a string attached to it, will work. And it could be very simple. It could just be a ball or like a lead weight or something, or something simple, or it could be something that's more ornate. Like here's one that's like titanium and has very intricate design. Another material that I found is very good is wood. Wooden pendulums are often very good. Oh, I left my wooden one over there. Oh, wait, let's see, here's one. Here's a wooden one. This can have an effect. Surprisingly, other natural materials like bone, it makes very good pendulums. I have these little bone pendulums, and ceramics. So you can use clay and make a pendulum. So there are some substances like plastic, they don't work. If you put metal shavings inside, it will work, but if you don't, it won't work. Plastic does not work. Glass is not good. But most metals, with the exception of copper, I don't like clear crystals. I don't think they're good. But if you have a pendulum that's made of a mineral, that's not a true crystal, that can be safe and you can use it effectively. But crystals can be a little challenging. And I won't go into that, but I have reasons why. But anyway, to summarize this, get at least one pendulum which is good for this work. It's metal, wood, clay, or a material like bone or antler, and it has a string on it. That's number one. Just get one good pendulum to start with, and then try it out. Next, if you can, obtain other pendulum designs, because what you will find is that, like you said, with the knee, sometimes something will respond to a particular pendulum, other times it won't. And the reason why is each pendulum has a different shape, and no one can explain why this is, but for some reason, these different shapes have an effect on the aura or the biofield of a person, and they can stimulate the body to start having a response to it. And if you are sensitive to energy, if you are a clairvoyant or clairsentient, you can put one of these pendulums over your palm and you will feel the energy. You might even feel the energy if I point it at you here. Some people are very sensitive, they can feel it. Other people, they may not be aware that they're feeling it, but their body feels it. And the body will have a reaction. But everyone's energy field is different. Everyone has a different response. So it may be that, like, I use this pendulum on you and it doesn't do anything. And then I take this pendulum and I use it on you. And all of a sudden the person is like, wow, I really feel that. Oh, it's really feeling much better now. And so it's good to have multiple pendulums to experiment with when you're working with a person, because you can't really predict in advance which one is going to necessarily work, because it's all based on energy, which is invisible, and everyone's energy field is different and things like that. So how do you approach it? Well, you can do what you did. You can use pendulum dowsing, which is accessing your unconscious or your subconscious to determine which pendulum to use. Or you could just follow your intuition, like, oh, I feel like this one might work. Or you can just experiment. You do it, and then you ask the person, well, does it feel any better? And they're like, no. And you're like, okay, well, let me try the other one. And then you just try the other one. And that's why it's good to have, if you're serious about this, it's good to always have multiple pendulums available. Like you have a selection there, like the Isis one is very mild, its energy. The Karnak one is stronger, it's more intense. The Osiris one is extremely intense. So those three there, you have a range of energies available to play with and to use. Like this one here, this Cosmic Merkaba one, this has a very broad energy field and it's very energizing. Oh yeah, that's similar probably. This one here is also very energizing. This Flower of Life has a very energizing effect. Whereas this one here, the skull, it's very intense, this energy, and it's very direct. It's not like the previous two that are more like energizing and diffused. This is more cutting almost, and like a laser. It's more focused. This one here is somewhat intermediate between the skull and the other ones. It's focused, but it's not super intense. So, just right there, I have a wide range available. So I could try, the energize, like I would say, okay, this person has this issue. I'll try the energizing one first. But then maybe I want to use the more intense one. So this gets to the next question, like, why would you use one pendulum over another? And the reason why is that you might want to achieve a certain energetic effect. Right. So, for example, with this pendulum here, it has a very intense direct energy, and this type of energy does two things. So let's say this is a signal. Let's say this is the body, and it's a signal that the body doesn't feel well. It's like it's in pain or whatever, right? Well, with this pendulum, what it can do is, number one, it can interrupt that signal and stop it briefly. And then the body can have a chance to start putting in a new signal of health. So it can serve as an interruption pattern. This pendulum can also do something else. Let's say that you have a signal and you're not sure about it. Like, I'll give you a very specific example. There was a woman who said to me, oh, I really like this man, but I'm not sure if he likes me or not. what should I do? And I was like, well, use one of these pendulums and send this type of energy and just send it to the relationship in way for the highest good, and just see what happens. And so she did it. And the next day she's like, he broke up with me. So what that meant was that the relationship was very weak. And when this intense energy stressed that relationship signal, the signal just collapsed and it was not able to stand on its own. And since she invocated only for the highest good, she got clarity. So these very strong signals, what they can do is they can interrupt something and allow something new to emerge. They can stop something that is unsound and make it go down. They also can make things stronger too. So like, let's say that a person is starting to get healthy, but they're not completely healthy. When you use one of these very strong signals, it can make it so that it has to resist, and then it gets stronger from resistance, and then it becomes a strong signal that you want. So these intense energies, that's one reason why you would choose this type of pendulum, like this or the Karnak, or maybe even the Osiris. You would choose it because you want to either interrupt or end or strengthen something through stress. Now, there's another approach, though, that you would use with all the other ones, like the Isis, or like this thing, the Flower of Life, or the Merkaba, or even the Mount Shasta one. This is the energizing one. So this is trying to revitalize or boost things energetically. So instead of, it's like, here's the signal and it's weak, instead of stressing it or ending it or anything like that, you are trying to send energy to energize this signal so that it gets stronger. So like the person is not feeling well, you try to energize perfect health. So this is the signal of perfect health. It's very weak. And using your pendulum and your spoken word, you are energizing it to raise it up and make it stronger. So that's the basic, like the most simple way. You're either trying to stop or interrupt something, or you're trying to revitalize it and bring it back. That's the two basic poles that you're trying to work with, if you want to really simplify it, to help you to choose. So someone comes to you, well, maybe you do some interruption first or ending first to try to end the problem, and then you do some energizing to start bringing their health back. Or you could do it the other way. You could energize them first and then try to interrupt certain things. Does that make sense?
Yes, why not? It is very insightful. Which brings me to my next question, because you showed a wooden pendulum and the size was very big. And sometimes when you order, for example, this miraculous pendulum, which I use for healing pains, or it is popular as far as the world of healing pain is concerned. Now, it comes in various sizes. What I have in my collection are these small metal pendulums. And what many people, they suggest is that the bigger the size of the pendulum, the better and the quicker the healing it will cause. Now, what are your thoughts on it?
That's a great question. Yeah. So my view is that size is not as important as its geometric shape, and that it's the geometry that is the most important factor. So if you take a tiny, small Mare Isis and a really big Mare Isis, you honestly won't see that much difference. But it kind of depends on a case-by-case basis. So for example, I have them on the other side of the room. I have this one pendulum that's very tiny, and I have the same exact pendulum made into a very large wooden model. Now, the interesting is, in that case, there is a difference, and it's hard. I can't explain why. So you really have to look at it sort of on a case-by-case basis with that particular design. Does increasing the size increase its power? With the Mare Isis, I don't feel that the amount that you gain from it is worth the investment. Like, you can just have a small one and it's good enough. And you can switch to a different model and get a greater effect than just using a larger one. But there are certain designs where increasing the size does seem to change the effect of it. So it's hard to make a general rule. You just have to kind of have experience with it. Now, a big miraculous, it's fun. I mean, it works. It's going to work. It's not like it's not going to work. So it's not like you wasted your money on it.
Right.
But in that particular case, I think that you would want to like, and same with the Isis pendulum. I've tried very large Isis pendulums and smaller ones. And there is somewhat of a difference, like between, like, you know, I've sold Isis pendulums that are this big, some that are this big, some that are this big, and I've tried ones that are this big. And there is like a difference, and like, but it's not, I mean, between the smallest one and the largest one, there is quite a difference. But I would say that if you're, you know, if you had to choose, like if you were being forced to choose between a large one and a small one, or, you know, just getting one and then another type, I would get two different types probably first, and then I would get larger ones or smaller ones later, because that, you know, you may actually find the larger one is very effective in certain circumstances, but it's not necessarily going to be the best. So I would say that's for when you're filling in gaps in your collection to go for different sizes. But the goal at first should be to get as many different shapes as possible. That's kind of my thoughts. It's not an easy answer. It's not clean. It's not easy to answer, but hopefully it made sense.
Yeah, why not? Yes, it is very important. And I guess once a person has experimented with the type or the shapes, it is only after that that he experiments with the size. So I think that is what you meant, that first let us go for the shape and experiment with the shapes. And once you are comfortable with various shapes and you have experimented with those, and then you graduate to another level and try for various sizes and how they can affect in the actual manifestation or shifting of reality.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Because like I said, you know, if you invest a lot of resources into just having variations in size, there will be a difference, but it's not enough to justify it. If you have a limited amount of resources to spend on it, you're much better off getting ones that are very different in shape. That way, if it's not working, you can switch to one that's radically different and you might see the change that you're looking for. Whereas with the different sizes, it may cause a shift. It may, but it may not. And so, you know, if you're going to gamble, or if you're going to take a chance on something, I think you're better off taking a chance having a wide variety of shapes. And then later, when you start achieving more expertise, you can then say, well, I have a large one, a medium one, and a small one. And then you try out all three, you know, like, because you have more experience and you've already invested in having a selection. Hopefully that is clear.
Yes, which brings me to the last segment of our interaction today. And that is some unique healing or manifestation experiences which you never had previously imagined or thought about. But as you did mention when we started our interaction, that you were standing in a queue and you tried to send love and light to all the people in the queue, and suddenly the queue started to move faster. So if you could just share with us some of your unique experiences where you just tried and it happened, and then you got to understand that, oh, this is also an area in which I could have used my pendulum. Just one or two of those experiences.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, there are so many, because like, and what you just said, I will answer your question, but what you just said at the end, like, to remember to use the pendulum, that is the thing that I find that most people don't do. So, for example, they might read my book, or they might watch a video, or they might take a free course, or they might watch this talk, and then they try it out, and they're like, wow, I saw a result. You know what I mean? But then then something happens in their life and they forget to use it. They don't think of it as the first thing. And so that is sort of the shift that once you get enough experience, that's the shift that occurs when you're just experimenting, when you're actually getting serious about this. All right, now to go to your question, there are so many things. You can do it for the most simple things in life, and you can also do it for the most like challenging things. I'll give you an example of a really challenging one. And I hope I don't overstep. I'm going to actually give you one that's culturally referenced from a person from India who I work with. I hope that's okay. It's about this person was in a very bad marriage. It was a woman, and she could not leave the marriage. And the courts told her no, but her husband was very bad to her. And she was a very good soul. And so they were saying, no, 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 no. So I was like, well, we can use the pendulum on this. And what you do in all legal battles with pendulum, whether it's like a court case for business or for, a marriage or for whatever, you send love to the other side, to the opposing counsel. You send love to the judge. And you also you don't ask to win. You ask that it works out for the highest good of everyone. And then you also have to do your own spiritual work, because there's some karma there that, that you're trying to work through with this person. Anyway, so this person, it took her about a year.
As you mentioned, I'll have to pause you here. As you mentioned, people come in your life for a reason, for a season, and for a lifetime.
Right.
Maybe there's a lifetime lesson to be learned with you.
Right. And so this woman, she was in this horrible marriage where her husband literally tried to kill her with poison to get the dowry from her. And it's just horrible, right? That's like terrible. Like, you think that, they would have an honorable marriage, and because she wasn't doing anything wrong, she was just a good person. So she did this with the pendulum, and it was unheard of, but the judge released her from the obligation of the marriage, and she was freed. But she did it in a way that was very high consciousness. She also did her own personal work of healing, to forgive this man and to, send love to him, even though he had tried to kill her. So that is the most extreme case I could possibly imagine. And it was impossible. There was no way for her to win. She had already been kicked out of the court like 5 times. Like, the judge was like, what are you doing here again? I had another similar case like that, where a student who had paid for university had a debt or a loan, and they were being told they had to pay back this loan. And it was very unfair, because the university had cheated the student out of their education. They had forced the student to leave because the professor had been having bad dealings with the students, and they didn't like that. So they kicked students out of the school, and then the student owed this money, even though they were unfairly kicked out of the school. So this school had very expensive lawyers who were paid lots of money to defeat this student. And so I was like, we're going to use the pendulum. We're going to just send love to the other side. We're going to witness this working out for everyone's highest good, including the school that was bad. And that's the thing people have trouble getting around. It's like, how can I send love to someone who did something that was bad to me? But that is where you have to, as the spiritual person, you have to take the higher ground. You have to take the high road and do this. And through using the pendulum and also taking personal actions, this student who had very little resources, they got a lawyer for free. They defeated the university. And then in the United States, they had to change the law so that any student who was in a similar position had to be relieved of their debt. This was impossible. There was no way that this was possible. This school had lawyers that cost millions of dollars. And this student who had nothing except a good heart and honesty and the pendulum was able to get a lawyer. They were able to defeat the school. They were able to change the law so that other students now will never have to suffer from this kind of debt. And the school itself had to change their policies so that they can no longer do this to other students. So that is like a case where it was impossible and it was a miracle, and you would never think that this could work.
Excellent.
Now, I have simpler cases too, I could mention, but those were 2 very extreme cases that you would think, well, that's ridiculous that this could work. But it definitely had an effect.
So, these are very insightful, and probably on this note, we will end our conversation that, this small little pendulum can really create wonders. Just keep this with yourself and try to use it in various of your life situations, and then you can try to create some kind of a reality shift in the problems which you are facing. I think this is by and large what we could take away from Dr. Erich Hunter's talk today. Thank you so much, Dr. Erich, for
one last thing before we go. Dear Divine, I witness that all people known and unknown watching this video have a beautiful day and have a beautiful life, and that everything works out for their highest good and the highest good of all concerned. Thank you for watching this video.
oh, that was so nice.
Sorry, I had to do it.
So thank you very much, Eric, for being with us today.
Oh, you're welcome.
I do intend to talk to you once again for something which has been rarely being talked about on the internet, and that is the universal pendulum. So
I'd love to talk about that one.
I would love to talk to you regarding that, and it will be very insightful for the viewers. But I thank you once again very much for being with us today, and I hope to see you again very soon. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.